right now. Hi, welcome to the Free Thought Forum. I'm your host, Brian Fields, and with me is my co-host.
I'm sometimes referred to as Dastardly Doug, but just call me Doug.
This is our July 9th broadcast of the Free Thought Forum. We have a bi-monthly show that runs every second and fourth Tuesday of the month. And I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's show. We'll open the show with some comments on news and current events. Doug, do you want to tell us about some of the things that you found that?
Well, if you look through the internet, and we all know that everything on the internet is absolutely true, because they can't put it on the internet unless it is true. Okay. There was an interesting article I saw. It was a little on the dated side, like about a year old, but they were talking about the number of disbelievers in America is growing, and it's growing by leaps and bounds each year. However, atheists are still the least trusted of all the different groups that are out there. You know, there are various numbers, percentages that are out there, and I suppose it's depends upon how you spin it, which one is correct. Are you talking about the die-hard, yes, there's absolutely no God whatsoever, or are you talking about the people that really do not ascribe to any particular religion? You know, they don't really disbelieve in God, but you know, sometimes there is the just in case attitude, where they don't want to conclusively say that yes, there is no God, just in case they die and they find out, ooh, there is. And I think that's one of the biggest fears that there are out there, is the fear of being wrong.
Well, yeah, there's the two of the big surveys that have come out in the last few years. The first is the one that asks the question, essentially, do you live your life as if there's a God? How do you live your life? And the answer to that question is 33% or so, 32% of the United States says no, they don't. The second question, which is a little more precise, is do you believe in God?
Yeah.
It's a very simple question, and the answer to that question is 20%. 1 in 5 say they do not hold a belief in God. And then, of course, then there's the question, well, what do you call yourself? And somewhere between 5 and 10% actually call themselves an atheist.
But I mean, that answer and that belief really is fraught with danger, in as far as sometimes it's real, sometimes it's just imaginary, but people will think that they're going to suffer in society, that their friends will desert them, and people will spit on them on the street,
right?
And there'll be a total outcast. But you know, it really isn't the case. Maybe for someone for the very first time that's walking up to you on the street, and you say, "Hi, I'm an atheist." Well, yes, you're going to get a very negative reaction. But anyone that has known you for a while, before they knew that you were an atheist, hey, you really are no different, because you have the same values, the same morals, basically the same everything as them, except you believe in one less God than them. Okay?
Yeah. You know, it's funny, you know, when you talk about beliefs and how people hold beliefs, and it's funny because the general public, you know, would say, well, if you don't believe in God, well, that's absolutely crazy, you know.
How can you not?
How can you not? But the latest argument at the Catholic Church is kind of funny, because Pope Francis has been working on lately trying to figure out if if Pope John Paul II is a saint. And of course, you know, the Catholic Church historically has a long, drawn-out process for figuring that out. But you know, they've decided to start shortcutting that process. And so what they've been trying to do is they've been trying to find evidence that Pope John Paul is now a saint, because it's important to the Catholic Church to have saints. They have a large collection of saints, and you know, why not add to the
all the intermediaries that they can play to.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, but it's funny how they do it. You know, they do take into account if there are reported miracles throughout the person's life, and of course, a miracle is essentially an assertion made by one person that can be corroborated by another person. And then, as long as there's nobody who can't say it's not a miracle, then what you've got is a miracle. And of course, I'm shortcutting it a little bit, but that is essentially the process. And, you know, it's funny because they've been having trouble finding miracles to attribute to Pope John Paul II.
And it's becoming more and more difficult, really going back to some of these saints that they had, and you start looking at what they considered as miracles back then. All of a sudden they don't really hold up.
Well, like, for example, the first miracle that they tried to, you know, while Jesus is of course helping football players score touchdowns,
yes.
and
Thank you, Mr.
multi-millionaires make money, the Sister Mary Simon Pierre was a French nun who reportedly had Parkinson's-like neurological issues. Of course, this was not really, it's been hard to validate that. Anyway, essentially what happened was she wrote Pope John Paul II's name on a piece of paper months after he died. You know, because it's not necessarily something that happens during the Pope's life. It's something that you could just tangentially associate with the Pope, and then all of a sudden you have a miracle. So,
but I mean, but God has to be responsible for it. That the only possible conclusion was that it was God's intervention, or God's help.
Yeah. Well, so bestowing a sainthood requires 2 certified miracles, and in the case of a medically inexplicable cure, the alleged wonder must be instantaneous, complete, and lasting. Well, unfortunately, that causes a little bump, because one of the doctors that looked into her medical history voiced doubts about the account. He figures out that her illness had not been Parkinson's, which is currently still incurable. Let's not be confused about that. Parkinson's is an incurable degenerative disease.
My mother had it, so I know that for a fact.
Yes. And then, but a related illness whose symptoms, you know, do occasionally go into remission. So they couldn't use it. So the next miracle was in 2011, at 6 years after he died this time. You know, to be clear, 6 years after he died, that this woman had an aneurysm that disappeared. And, well, eventually the woman died.
Yeah.
So, you know, with all of these miracles, you know, and all of the that they're trying to attribute to Pope John Paul II, the only thing that I can say about it is that, to me personally, it's disappointing that none of the miracles that have been attributed to John Paul II included stop priests from raping children. You know, that's you'd think, of all of these individual people, shoot a little bit higher, like running the church that he ran in a way to, I don't know, stop atrocities.
But it makes you wonder how much he cared about it. Did the church come first? And obviously, it did.
Yeah.
Sweep it under the carpet, and sooner or later, it will go away, or it'll be covered by the other dust that you sweep under the carpet.
Yeah. But it's just fascinating how the church's priorities run, in those particular circumstances. That here we've got the most important thing here is let's grant sainthood to our popes, but we can't deal with the issues in the church itself, at least not in any publicly remunerative way,
Well, I mean, let's face it, though. They found out that any sort of publicity for that just absolutely killed them.
Right.
I mean, with the lawsuits that are going on, the Pope's coffers are going down and down and down, and finally people are waking up and saying, oh, "Wait a minute! I don't want to live with this." Particular atrocity. So therefore, why on earth should I donate my hard-earned cash to help hide priests that were pedophiles? And I think that people are starting to wake up. Of course, there's a lot of Catholics out there that still turn a blind or jaundiced eye toward what is happening. And what to me is scary is that, okay, maybe that priest on the other side of the country, out on the West Coast, maybe some of them are pedophiles, but certainly no one in our church. And
unfortunately, they it's been pretty clear that it's a widespread issue. It's not something that's confined to any one diocese or even any one country. It's all over the world.
Yeah, and it seems to be a magnet. Go into the priesthood because you will be protected. Whereas if you were out in public, you'd be arrested and spend time in federal prison, and then you'd get out and you'd have a record for the rest of your life.
And not to pick on the Catholic Church for too much. I mean, we could spend an episode doing that. In fact, we have spent episodes doing that. But there was a Christian pastor who, he's been in the news several times, but Pastor Stephen Anderson of the Faithful Word Baptist Church in Tempe, Arizona, he's been in the news several times for saying some really wacky things. But of course, the latest one is that he believes that the government should use death penalties on homosexuals.
How very forgiving and very Christian of him.
How loving and yes. Caring and kind and
forgiving, yes.
Well, yeah. And here in Pennsylvania recently, there was something like this a little more close to home when, not quite stoned to death, but one of our representatives decided to say something to the effect of that a gay representative speaking about the Defense of Marriage Act was somehow ungodly and against God's law on the floor of the state house. Representative Daryl Metcalf made statements to the press afterwards. Now, Representative Sims, the one who was going to speak about it, used a mechanism in the House that allows him to speak as long as no one else objects. And sometimes, if a representative will use that mechanism, representatives will object.
But it has to be on a specific subject, and they can't
Right.
depart from that subject.
Right, but the objection can be for anything. You know, so they don't have to tell anybody about it. They can just do it. Well, Daryl Metcalf was kind enough to go to the press and explain his reasoning in full view of the public eye,
Yeah.
for us all to understand exactly how much he thinks of the separation of church and state, and also Representative Sims as an individual. So it's something I think that is very interesting. And later, 2 days later, Representative Sims went on the House floor and gave a very, very strong objection to the way Metcalf had referred to him specifically and referred to his intentions. And I watched that, and it's on YouTube. You can see it on YouTube, and I believe it's been reported in several news outlets. But it's definitely worth watching. By the way, before we get too much further, I want to remind everyone that this is a live call-in show. If you would like to call in and join in the conversation, you can feel free. The number is up on your screen. The phone number is 717-846-5067. And like I said, give us a call. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Doug, do you want to move on to the next topic?
Well, just slightly askew here. The pray away gay.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I mean, that was...
Exodus International.
Yes, it gained a lot of traction with a lot of people that were really homophobics. And they figured that all they had to do was get all the gay people to pray, and God would remove any gay influences, predilections from them, and they would miraculously, see another miracle here, turn straight. Now, what always irritates me about when you talk about gay people and gay rights, but especially in Pray Away the Gay, it always has a sexual connotation to it. You talk about a gay person, all you think about is the sex act.
Right, and not the idea that
they could be in love.
Right, have a relationship. But I mean, not that there's anything wrong with the sex act to begin with, but the idea that somehow gay people are alien, that have this alien feeling system, that all of a sudden they're not attracted to people in any way but a sexual way. I mean, yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. And love does fit into their lives. It's just as easy for a gay person to be in love with a fellow gay person as it is for a straight person to be in.
Because we're all human beings.
Yeah, we're all human beings, and.
Well, there's good news, though, attached to the Exodus International thing, though.
They're kind of going out of business.
They're going out of business. The pastor, or not the pastor, well, the leader of Exodus International released this very public, very long statement denouncing and apologizing for the actions of his organization and walked away. And he's dismantling the organization and coming out as a gay man, admitting that he's gay in public and that he's tried to change, and there's absolutely no way that his ministry would actually ever accomplish that which they set out to do.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how true it is. It's probably just rumor and innuendo here, but I heard from a couple of sources that whatever they are, or who they are, that there are other groups that are trying to sort of reform the Exodus project under a different name, but still it will be basically pray away the gay.
Right. Now to be absolutely clear, these ministries, and I call them ministries because they really aren't therapy. I mean,
No.
we'd be lying if we labeled this anything other than a Christian ministry. But these ministries have been denounced by every major psychiatric organization out there. Every medical profession denounces them. There's absolutely no way to take anything they say really with more than a grain of salt. And so for that, you can't help but wonder at it's a little like Don Quixote tilting at windmills, trying but you look at the pastor of this ministry, and you realize that he's gay, and of course, back a few years back, and I don't remember the exact details, but there was actually a study done with gay people. Well, actually, no, there were two groups. The first group was people who are rabidly homophobic, and the people who really didn't care all that much about gays. And about persecuting them anyway. I mean, obviously they have friends and so on and so forth. But so what they did was they did what they call a tumescence test.
Oh yeah, yes.
And so what that means is they essentially strapped electrodes to these men's penises. To measure things like blood flow and pressure.
Yeah.
No, my understanding is like a cuff. Anyway,
a blood pressure cuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So what they do then is they attach it to these reading instruments, and then they showed them gay porn. And for the most part, the people who were in the set that were not upset about gay rights or whatever, they didn't have, and were straight and claimed to be straight, didn't have any reaction, or very few of them had reaction to the gay porn. 80% of the men in the, quote, rabidly homophobic crowd, 80% of them had a significant reaction to watching gay porn.
Isn't that wonderful?
So what that shows you is that this negativity is really coming out from a place of self-loathing. For most people, obviously not all, but most people, 80%. That's a significantly high statistical number to use. For you to say 80% of them had a reaction, that makes you wonder about anybody who's out there and they have such a big concern about gay marriage and gay relationships and gay love and anybody who has such a hang-up that they have to insist that another human being shouldn't have the right to do it. That hatred has to come from somewhere, And
well, I mean, but you have to kind of put aside young, teenage, hormone-driven people too. I'll admit that when I was 15, I always used to carry a raincoat with me, whether or not it was raining or not. You always had to be able to hide yourself or cover yourself.
But there was a point in here somewhere, right, Doug?
Yeah. The point in here that maybe some of this tumescence data might have been slightly skewed.
I see, by age range.
Okay.
Well, any study that's done usually has a large group. I mean, in order to do a study, you have a very large sample size to work with.
Yeah.
And I would argue that even still, 80% is
that's pretty significant, and it's but
you're comparing it with a control group too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at the study, but I don't. I would rely on that enough to make a conclusion.
But
And it says essentially what most people already kind of have a suspicion of. You know what I mean? And that is if you look at politicians, for example, how many politicians that rabidly support anti-gay legislation, and then end up being found with gay lovers. Rentboy.com, for example, and all the other stuff that's happened. Larry Craig and
all the rest.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that same sort of test would be used on pedophiles. Would that help identify them? The only drawback that you have to the thing is,
yeah, I don't know. I don't know that that's an ethical test that anybody would want to do. Moving on to the next one. We have a pastor, another pastor, saying really wacky, crazy things. Jay Dennis, who's pastor of the Church of the Mall in Lakeland, Florida, has said that watching pornography is the new bubonic plague.
Yeah, but it's not bubonic plague. It's contagious, and I don't think pornography is.
Yeah, you'd think it's a little bit of hyperbole.
Yeah.
But what he's doing is he's issuing a call for 1 million Christian men to live porn-free. They need to promise God, their pastors, and their wives that they'll go cold turkey. And the reason why is he says that porn leads to broken marriages, child abuse, and physical harm, and is a cancer, a war, a deadly lure, and as well as an addiction as powerful as crack that is spread by Satan.
Satan's in there someplace.
Satan, of course.
Satan is a wily guy. He
gets into anything.
Tempt him.
It's just wacky stuff,
Isn't it funny, though, that the porn industry is actually bigger than General Motors and Ford, put together? I mean, the porn industry would not be as big as they were if people didn't buy it.
And I think personally that sexual repression ties into that as well. I mean. It's funny that first of all, I don't have any problem with porn to begin with. I think porn is fine. It's just a sexual fantasy, but you find that porn usage actually ends up. What state is the biggest consumer of porn?
No.
Utah.
Gee whiz, isn't that surprising?
Shocker, right?
Yeah. They can't even drink coffee in Utah, but they can watch porn.
No, they can't. They're not supposed to be. But yeah, so I mean, my point is that when you impose proscriptions against sex, when you try to artificially alter human sexuality, you end up with some aberrations. But and I'm not even trying to say that porn is an aberration, but the obsession or the addiction to porn would be an aberration.
Yeah.
And if you push, if you repress somebody to an extreme, it's something you would have to expect.
Yeah.
So, speaking of aberrations, this is my last story. I have a pedophile priest used a ticket to heaven to manipulate his victim. Yeah. So, a priest in Belfast, James Martin Donaghy, was convicted of sexual assault, a total of 17 offenses against 3 boys, but he's admitted the existence of other victims. What he did was he found them and groomed them through his work as a parish priest. We expect that. Unfortunately, we expect that. But in one particular case, the prosecutor revealed to the court that Donaghy encountered a particular 7-year-old boy preparing for his first confession and his first communion. The child expressed concern about the teaching on purgatory, the teaching that those that aren't destined for eternal torment in hell must be purified before they go to heaven. And he thought that his grandfather might be suffering in purgatory. So Donaghy told the child that if he performed sexual acts on him, the encounters would get his grandfather into heaven. And if he told anybody, it wouldn't work.
What a great way to take advantage of a young child, and how despicable can you be?
Oh, it gets worse.
Does it?
Yeah. So he went along with it, right? But a few days later, he went to confession to speak to a priest about what was going on. And lo and behold, when he went into the confessional, guess who was there to hear his confession?
Oh, you kidding?
There's several pieces to this story to unwrap, and of course, the fact that this priest was not only a pedophile but used emotionally manipulated this child in such a horrific way. It's funny because priests are intended to be an authority on religion and be authority on their relationship. Yeah, and you go to these people. It's scary because we go to not we, you and I don't.
Yeah.
But people in the public go to priests expecting them to be an expert on all sorts of topics.
Yes, even marriage.
Yeah. You go to get married, you go to marriage counseling with a priest. And, in a Catholic church, you're talking to a guy who's never been married and is never going to get married. Has no personal experience with it whatsoever, not except what he finds in a textbook and in the Bible. And you're going to this supposed expert to help you decide if it's a good idea for you to get married or not. And then you're going to listen to this expert who will tell you things about what your life is supposed to be like. In never having experienced it, never being able to actually relate on any way other than the artificial way that your religion tells you that he should relate to you.
And reading it in books and become an instant expert on it.
It's sad because I think the really disturbing part, not about this story. This story is just disturbing on its own, but I mean in general, about priests being therapists. Not understanding psychiatry, and most of them don't anyway. Not having gone to school for it, just kind of sitting there and thinking through the problem and coming up with what's hopefully their best answer, And so what's the difference between that and going and talking to a friend? A friend's going to give you a bit of advice, except the difference is that a friend knows your situation probably, and probably familiar with other parties involved and cares about you on a level that I don't think a priest ever really could,
No, I mean, you're just another face, another number,
right.
Another person that you can chalk up. That I counseled them, and of course, if it doesn't work, then it's their fault. Either they didn't believe hard enough, or they didn't want to.
Right.
Like that, and I just can't see that. Now, I'll be honest with you. I have sort of a thing against therapists, especially like psychologists and psychiatrists. And the thing that I have against them, although understandable, is that they never have answers. Unlike a friend who will give you suggestions,
right.
A therapist will say, "What do you think?" I say, "What do you mean, what do I think? If I knew what the heck to think, for crying out loud, then I wouldn't be here paying you $200 an hour for you to ask me what I think. How do you feel? And I think there's a little more interaction. If I was going to go to a psychiatrist, I would want a one-on-one discussion with the person, and I would want them to examine what ifs. I want to get into maybe a philosophical discussion with them, and be able to talk about what ifs, but get some interaction with one and between a psychiatrist or a therapist or whatever it is, instead of trying to make me find my own answer. And I think I don't believe that unless you spend $100,000 on it, you would find that answer. I heard, what was his name? The big tall guy that always used to talk dirty on Howard Stern. Howard Stern. I watched him for a little while until he became boring. But he was saying that he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on going to a psychiatrist, and he still didn't have any answers. All he would do is sit there and talk. And the person that he was talking to never said really anything to him other than, what do you think? Why do you think that you did that? Like that. And I really believe that a lot of people require an interaction like that. Now, what do you think about it? Take a look there. You can see on the screen the number that is right beside my beautiful head. And this is a live call-in show, and we would just love to hear from you. Okay? Unfortunately, the number is way, way back, and I can't see what the heck it is. Would you mind, with your young eyes...
Yeah, behind my glasses, but 717-846-5067. Like you said, you can give us a call in. About therapists, just so you know, I mean, one of the things that therapists use a lot is something called the Socratic method, and that is they're trying to engage you in the process of
learning about yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than giving you the answers, they're trying to help you discover your answers, because a therapist can't walk in your brain.
Yeah. And they can be wrong, and therefore they would therefore you would blame them if they offered you a suggestion that didn't work for you.
Well, and that's certainly true in some cases, but I don't know if it's that ubiquitous. But in any case, moving on to another topic. There was an interesting thing that happened a few weeks ago in Florida.
Yeah, the June 20, I think it was June 29th. The American atheists erected what would you call it? Not a monument, but a stone. A granite
bench.
Stone.
Stone bench.
A bench that depicted atheism, atheist thoughts, and everything. And they put it right next to this great big marble display of the 10 Commandments. Well, you can imagine how well that went over with all the Christian people. And one of the things that Dave Silverman of American Atheists promised is that he is going to be putting 50 more of those throughout the country, and they're going to intentionally put them near the Ten Commandments to show some of the hypocrisy of the Ten Commandments.
You're right. The Ten Commandments. It's funny because there is a lot of case history behind Ten Commandments monuments, but around in the 1950s, there was a big push in religious circles to install copies of the Ten Commandments all over the country in courthouses and schools and things like that. It essentially was a reaction to the communist scare, to set up a contrast between the godless Soviets and their communism, and the Christian Americans and their capitalism.
But you see, a short while later, it got an additional boost with good old Charlton Heston when they put out the movie The Ten Commandments.
Right.
Now they went absolutely crazy, and what better way to advertise the movie The Ten Commandments than to donate all these plaques and everything that had the Ten Commandments on it, and just give it to these people to hang everywhere. And it was a wonderful, wonderful advertising.
And it's funny though, it's because they're monuments and because they have the appearance of having been there for a while, people then forget, and now we're only a couple generations beyond that time period, and people think, well, that's the way it's always been, and so that's okay. But the court cases behind these things, because obviously, typically this is a public property, and therefore the government, it's very clear that government can't establish religion. That's and part of establishing religion is if the government uses the public square to espouse a particular religion, that's an establishment of religion. Favoring a particular religion, that's also establishing religion. So what they do is, there were a few court cases brought up. In some cases they've been removed, especially in school districts. I think it's been pretty standard that it doesn't fly at a school district.
Yeah, and you have to take them out of the classrooms.
Yeah. But in courthouses, it's a little bit different. The standard is different. And so if a Ten Commandments monument is there by itself, and it's not something that is actually historically relevant, then it's fair game. Especially if they make if it's there by itself, it's fair game to be removed because it doesn't have a place there. But the reaction to that has been, typically, well, let's make it part of a free speech zone. And in a free speech zone, the people in the public should conceivably be able to say whatever they like. And so, in this particular case, there was a Ten Commandments monument by itself. And American atheists fought for its removal. Now, they when they sued, the county was inclined to capitulate. But then the Christian groups countersued to prevent its removal. And so you had two warring lawsuits. And so the decision came down at the end that the Stark County offered a settlement, and the settlement was that American atheists would be able to install their own monument and actually make it a proper free speech zone where you have the two monuments in the same area.
Or more.
Yeah.
There's
nothing stopping in a free speech zone any public person from installing a monument as long as it follows whatever guidelines have been set up for the free speech zone. There's nothing. So when you set up that area, you've opened the floodgates. And we're fine with that. Atheists are fine with free speech. Free speech is a wonderful thing.
And also comparative religions. We would just absolutely love to see friezes, monuments, and everything that really addressed comparative religions, to teach comparative religions in school. Now, no, we wouldn't go along with teaching just Christianity in school, but comparative religion, talk
in
about
the context of a class on religion, sure. Now, the problem, of course, is that Christians like to take over science class and make that about religion, which is an entirely separate issue.
Yeah, well, look at Dover.
Yeah. Here in Pennsylvania, we have a pretty good idea of what happens when that happens.
Well, they did kind of make it fools of themselves there, and I mean, they lied through their teeth.
Yeah, it was what was it the judge called it? Breathtaking inanity.
Well, there was a lot of proof against. I can't even remember the guy's name that was for creationism, but he just lied and lied and lied, and I was really quite surprised that they didn't get him on perjury charges.
Well, as I recall, it was recommended that they look into perjury charges. By the way, a quick reminder, we do have some time left in the program if you'd like to call in and comment. The number is, as I said before on the screen, it's 717-846-5067. Please call us. We'd love to hear from you, and feel free to offer comment or ask questions or anything you like.
Yeah. Just I have one other comment. Actually, I have tons of comments, but we'll just keep it down to a couple because we're getting close to the end of the show. But one of my biggest hopes is that, how can I put this? If I were to be arrested for anything, okay, falsely accused, of course, but had to go to court and be on trial, one of the things that irritates me the most is the great big plaque over the judge's head that says, "In God we trust." I don't trust in God, and I really would object to having that sign there and have them not necessarily remove it, because there's a fat chance of ever doing that, but moving it to a venue where you don't have that constant reminder, "In God we trust," against a person who does not believe in God and actually finds it offensive. And I do. I see all the, especially the cop shows there, and you've always got that gigantic plaque behind the judge, "In God we trust." And I'm going, nope, I don't trust in God. And if I'm going to swear or affirm something, I will not swear to God or "so help me God." I will affirm that everything I'm about to say is the truth and nothing but the truth. But there's certainly not going to be in any "so help me God."
Right. We have a caller calling in. Hello, caller.
Hello, Brian. This is Dana Nebo.
Hi. How you doing?
Oh,
Great. How are you?
Oh, pretty good.
can we turn up the volume a little bit?
I'm sorry?
That was to the to our producers. If we're asking them to turn up the volume, it's hard to hear.
Oh, okay. Good. I wanted to comment on the atheist monument.
Yes.
And I just kind of wanted to say that I know that there's been some controversy surrounding it, not just within the religious community, but within the secular community as well. And that I think that it's a really good step forward in normalizing atheism in the public eye,
Uh-huh.
And making it, I guess, less strange. You guys
Right.
were talking about earlier about how, if you say that you're an atheist to somebody, they're like, oh, well, you seem so nice.
Yeah, it's fascinating. If they say if you get 3 atheists in a room, you'll typically get 3 different opinions on things. And when it comes to the monument, of course, there are people who wonder at the general argument tends to be, we don't want any monuments out there. Why put an atheist monument up? We don't want the 10 Commandments there. Why would we settle for putting an atheist monument there? And the problem is that pragmatically, that's a losing strategy in some situations. We may end up in a situation where, well, there's a public square and there's a monument there, and we'd love to have it come down, but in the meantime, we shouldn't be ceding the public square to Christians while we're fighting for the monuments to be removed. We should be getting atheism out in the public eye, and we should be, taking advantage of these rules to make sure that our rights are also respected.
Right, exactly. So it's not the ideal because, of course, you want government space to be a secular space, but it's definitely better than just the 10 Commandments standing there on its own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, I kind of feel bad for Clark County in the situation they were in because, they had lawsuits coming from both sides, and it's obvious they were just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, I definitely saw that. And even the Christian organization that put up the 10 Commandments monument had a fairly even-handed response to the atheist monument, in as much as respecting the rights that we share.
Right. Yeah, they didn't speak too negatively about it, although I understand that at the revealing that there were a few Christian, well, first there were a few Christian protesters, but not many, and apparently some of the ones that were there couldn't spell. What was it? Jesus spelled wrong, and then something, there was another word on it that sounded like
Hook. It was Hook for Jesus.
Yes. They were standing along the highway, and they wanted to get people to honk to support Jesus. So they said, honk for Jesus, but actually it was spelled hook for Jesus. And it was Jesus spelled wrong, which is rather funny.
Yeah. All the hookers, waving on.
But I also know that Eric Hovind, who is the son of the creationist Kent Hovind, who went to jail for tax fraud. Anyway, he was out there at the monument, and apparently he decided that he was going to jump up on the monument and address the crowd and preach at them. Mm-hmm. And of course, it was met with absolutely 0 conversions, as I understand.
Oh, that's surprising, right?
Yeah. I got a chance to watch the ceremony online, and I think it was very well done. It was very tasteful. It was a great display. Having there were 200 atheists there to reveal it, mm-hmm. And I was very proud to be an American atheist.
Yes. I felt the same way when I watched it.
I'm sorry, Shannon, I didn't hear that.
I said I felt the same way when I watched it.
Yeah.
Can I have just a slight segue here? As far as acceptance of atheists, and have you noticed that there, except maybe for House, and a couple of other shows, there is no really network shows about atheists in it that are funny. Okay? When the gay movement started, they were very, very smart, and what they did was that they approached the networks and say, we should put funny gay people in these situation comedies to show that they were just like everyone else. And I think that atheism has kind of missed the boat a little bit on this. There is a great deal of influence by comedy, and we very, very seldom see any situation comedies with funny atheists in it, except of course for me. But
actually, I think The Big Bang Theory has some good, at least de facto atheist characters in it. But I do think one of the things that I am disappointed by, and I've said this before, is that when it comes to atheists, we aren't represented well on television in general. You know, most of the atheist characters that you see on television are broken in some way. You've got House, who is, House. You've got Bones. You've got several atheists, and the reason why they're atheists is always because they have some kind of mental issue, some kind of something is just not quite the norm with them, and that's always kind of concerned me.
Push that part of it,
Yeah.
They highlight it.
Yeah, and so there's very few roles in media for atheists that are just your average atheist who is a part of his community and does, or her community, and does what they can, and I would love to see more of that, and especially in the wake of things like the recent tragedies, the Oklahoma tornadoes, and other situations where every time you see things like that, you always get a Christian pastor who gets in front of the media and says something to the effect of, well, you don't see atheists out there doing things, when in fact, we frequently are, but we don't feel the need to trumpet our God as the source of it, and that's frequently a problem. Well, Shannon, thank you for calling in. We're coming towards the end of the program.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and we're going to be wrapping up here in about a minute. But so anyway, so as far as so just a few quick events. We have the PA State Atheist Humanist Conference for 2013.
Be there.
Be there. It'll be in Philadelphia. The website is atheistpa.org. You can also catch us on Facebook at fb.com/Pennsylvania Nonbelievers. And check out our website, panonbelievers.org. You can catch us there as well. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Brian Fields, and with me has been Doug Diggens.
Pleased to meet you.
And please tune in 2 weeks on July 23rd at 6 p.m., same time and the same channel. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time.
You all come back now, you hear? We'll be here.